Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey, here once again with another video on The Flash Season 5, and this is going to be my review for Episode 5, otherwise entitled All Dolled Up. But of course, before we get into the rest of the video, be sure to, have watched the episode before you continue because there's spoilers, and, yeah, do that, then come back to the video later on. But if you are continuing on, be sure to drop a like on the video if you enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed the episode, I guess, and just, yeah, leave a like to show your support. And of course, let me know in the comment section down below your various opinions about this episode throughout this video. What you like, what didn't you like, your overall thoughts on the episode, let me know in the comment section down below. But I guess the two main things to take away from the most recent episode of The Flash before this one, you gotta remember that The Flash was on break last week, so it was actually like 2 weeks ago that the show was on, I guess was the Nora v Iris conflict leading into this episode, and there's some issues around that. I think we all know that with this episode. And also the Cicada mystery, or the Cicada mystery as people like to correct me. But there's nothing really too much about that in this episode. So it's mainly the Nora and Iris sort of conflict. But we start off the episode by seeing, well, Nora avoiding her parents, not answering their phone calls and all of that. And she's getting involved with, you know, the superhero activities, but she's not corresponding and not, you know, being in tandem, which in turn, you know, leads to, you know, pedestrians and the general public of Central City being in danger. So it's almost very similar to, like, you know, in the past with, you know, other heroes that Barry's had to mentor, and they don't maybe not listen and just go about their own thing. They lead to people getting in danger. Like the most recent one is obviously Ralph last season. So there's some similarities to that. But obviously she's mainly avoiding Iris because of what happened last episode. She just doesn't want to interact with Iris at all. And that's expected. But Barry does make a good point to Nora. It's like, this is not your mother from the future. This is Iris now. She's not the mother in the future, so treat her differently. You know, just try to get to know her. So it's a good point by Barry. Not a perfect point because, once again, we're not in the... You know, Nora's been in the future. She's experienced it for X amount of years. So there's still... She just can't let it all go at that point. But it's still a good point by Barry for Nora to think about. But we do have the villain for this episode, known as Ragdoll, appear, and he's too spooky for me. Quite the creepy villain. We've seen him in all the trailers, and we do find out later in the episode that he was like crushed by part of the satellite from the Enlightenment incident at the end of season 4, and of course there's dark matter in there. So that's why he's basically like all mangled, and every single time he like moves, it's all like crack. The sound effects, honestly, disgusting. The actual movements I can sort of just deal with, but the actual sound effects were a bit too much for me at certain points, but that's why he's like that, because essentially he was crushed. I'm guessing all of his bones were broken, he was just flattened, but then he was affected by dark matter, which gave him all these abilities. And we do find out that he's actually a part of a rich family, but he was kicked out, I think, 2 years prior. So for, 2 years, or a year and a bit, or almost 2 years, I guess, he was going about and doing certain things before being crushed by the satellite. But we do see Iris doing some journalism when she first goes to investigate the first site of Ragdoll's attack, which was good. Something very small, but it's still good to see. So as long as there's some stuff there with the journalism, that's good. As we've said, it just seems like maybe the journalism stuff that they promised maybe isn't going to come to fruition. That might have been them lying a bit. But we'll have to wait and see going forward. But at least we got some of it in this episode. We did have some talks between Nora and Cecile, which were sort of interesting, I guess. But there is a reference to a land of golden giants, which is a thing from the comics, like back in the Silver Age. I think it's I think the comic was like Barry and Wally going back and doing it. So it's like, I can't remember what Cecile says, like a parallel dimension in the past or something like that. Something along those lines. But that's like a reference to a much earlier history in the comics. But obviously the side story, if you want to call it, for this episode, even though I think it was the most interesting part of the episode, but we'll talk about more about that later on in like the overall summary of the episode. We had Caitlin, you know, investigating her father, and we find out that her father actually knew about Killer Frost, and we find out through clues and stuff like that. And essentially we're just following clues after clues. Or not like heaps of clues, but a decent amount of clues in this episode, which lead us to like a chemical place. I think it was Vieira Chemicals was the name of it. And then Cisco's able to vibe constantly throughout the episode. Unfortunately, every single time he's using his powers, dark matter from Cicada's dagger that stabbed him is like affecting his central neuron system, or whatever the neurological system, whatever they called it. It's affecting him every single time he uses his powers. And we can see that he's like bleeding from his cuts and stuff when he vibes, which eventually leads to him passing out and stuff like that. And actually gives us probably I think it's the MVP of the episode, the best scene of the episode. Maybe tied with another scene, but we'll talk about that later on. But the Caitlin and Cisco scene, where basically, Caitlin's not just wanting Vibe there, she wants Cisco there as well because they're friends. So that was a really great scene. And I just think the Killer Frost storyline was relevant. I just thought it was actually interesting to watch, and you knew that you had to watch it to understand what was going on, in further episodes, in future episodes. So I just thought it was more interesting. But we do have that architect building scene, like cool scene, I guess, with the building coming down and like Ragdoll going through the things. But there is a Gotham reference there. Now, we had a Gotham reference in Arrow yesterday. Obviously, we have the Elseworlds crossover coming up where Gotham will take place, or Gotham will play a part, might I say. So it just seems like, are they just constantly putting Gotham references in there now because they're leading up to Elseworlds? But yeah, they had a Gotham reference there, I guess, so that's pretty cool. But then we had that Gala scene, which was run by, or held by, Peter Merkel's mother. So she's like the rich person, obviously how, Peter was in a illustrious position when he was younger. One of the main things to take away from this is that Iris sort of saw herself in Peter Merkel's mother because of the way she treated Peter and how he ended up being and the resentment he held towards her. It's sort of like mirrors, remember what Nora was going through and Nora's views on Iris and stuff like that. So it just sort of messes with Iris's head. But this was probably the lead on into maybe one of the biggest issues that, just not this episode either, I think it's The Flash, probably over the past 3 seasons has had, and I've mentioned it a couple of times. It's The Flash's lazy writing and constant need to have one-on-one emotional scenes. Now, there were 2 good ones in this episode, 2 good one-on-one emotional scenes, and they should have been the only, actually, there was 2 and then 1 that was needed. So the 2 good ones were the Caitlin and Cisco one, which I mentioned earlier, and then the Barry and Iris one on the couch, when Iris is talking about Francine and the similarities there, and like Barry's trying to reassure her. That was a good scene as well. So the Caitlin Cisco scene and that Barry and Iris scene on the lounge, great scenes. They're the good one-on-one emotional scenes. However, there's bad ones, like the one between Barry and Iris outside of the Gala scene. Not needed, irrelevant, didn't need it, who cares? And there was another one with Barry and Iris as well, and even the Nora and Cecile ones. Really couldn't care less for them. I was in the Discord chatting with some people on Twitter and stuff. Just really couldn't care for them. You got to keep them relevant and actually have some effectiveness from them. Otherwise, they lose relevance and effectiveness. If you had them every single episode and they're just basically the same thing, oh, this is messing with my mind. No, and everyone just like eventually doesn't care about them unless they're massive. And the other thing that can sort of be negative about that is you have them too much. Maybe the scenes which need to be emotional and have some effectiveness, like the Caitlin and Cisco scene and the Barry and Iris scene in this episode, people can be like, oh, not another one of these scenes. You know what I mean? But if they were placed more effectively throughout the seasons and stuff, no one would really be annoyed by them because they're relevant to the story. But if there's if it's overdone in regards to their scene, then people just like start to lose care about them. So they need to work on that. It's lazy writing in my opinion. I just think it's a way that they waste 5 minutes in the episode in regards to setting up that emotional scene, having that one-on-one talk, and then maybe some follow-on. It's just a way for them to waste time, and I think it's very lazy. So hopefully, look, it's wishful thinking that they're going to get rid of it because they probably won't. But The Flash is the only show currently that still does it consistently. Maybe Supergirl does it every now and then, but I think The Flash does it much more than Supergirl. And Arrow's sort of tried to wash it out of its show. So Flash maybe needs to take some notes from Arrow. But essentially the big climactic point of the episode is when we see Barry kidnapped by Ragdoll, and we see it in the trailer, it happened exactly the same way in the trailer as it did in the episode. The only thing that was sort of funny was the video message. I was like, why does Iris have the phone so close to her face? It was almost like, I think they might have recorded it, maybe they had to zoom in or something. It just seemed weird. I don't know if I was the only one that noticed that, but yeah. But one of the funnier parts of the episode, and I guess cool parts of the episode, is when Ralph just becomes Spider-Man and uses his abilities as the elongated man to literally swing through Central City. Pretty cool. Hopefully we see that more, and it just wasn't like a one-off, so hopefully we see that more going forward. But the Ragdoll fight, I'm not even going to talk about it. We all know it was stupid, so let's just move on. But then we move on to the resolution part of this episode. Now, we all knew this was coming because it was in the promo images. And I don't know why it was in the promo images, but then the promo images for episode 6 confirmed this was a resolution scene. This is when we see Nora with the scrapbook of Iris's, and she's going through all that. Good part. However, it just seemed that this episode was used just to rush through their storyline. Now, this was never going to be... This was a lose-lose. I think this was a lose-lose for this storyline because they were going to rush through it or they were going to dwell on it and no one was going to be happy. So I'm sort of on the fence with it, because I think, it's silly to rush through it, because it just seems like unnatural that they would rush through it right now. However, they couldn't dwell on it because the example that we've been using is the Cisco and Barry conflict from season 3. When I think it was episode 3 or 4 that Cisco learns that Barry was the cause of his brother's death, and because of Flashpoint and stuff like that, until the crossover when it was like the last episode of the crossover where it was resolved. I can't even speak. So they needed to avoid that because people really didn't like that. So what was that, 5-6 episodes? So they needed to sort of resolve that or avoid that, might I say, with this Nora and Iris thing. So they were in a lose-lose, and I think it's just the issue when you bring up a storyline like this. So it's resolved, I guess. So now we just move on. But anyway, so going forward, Nora and Iris are on good terms, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But obviously, we're still a bit suspect on Nora. We're not necessarily sure if she has 100% good intentions or if she's being used. But she's definitely being used by someone in the future. So maybe their plan is to have Nora get on good terms. So have to wait and see. Obviously, there's still some big question marks on the Nora character and what's going forward. And obviously, the fact that her and Nora are going to be like friends now, I think this is like every single time there's just, like a relationship and just time spent between Nora and someone, especially Barry and Iris. She's like moving closer and closer and closer to just erasing herself from the timeline. So I don't know how they're going to make it. If Nora survives the end of this season, it doesn't make sense. I think we've all come to the conclusion. If you are still in Dreamland and don't think that's going to happen, then fair enough. But I'm surprised there's no signs of Nora disappearing from the timeline. The only other way that it works is that if she's from another timeline. And even then, that sort of is hard to make sense. And the show sort of struggled in the past with doing that. So I'm intrigued to see how they deal with it. I don't know if it's going to be that great, but we'll wait and see. But the end of the episode is Cisco tapping into one of DeVoe's satellites from the end of last season and using it to, in the future, track certain things like maybe Cicada and stuff like that. But specifically for, going forward, it's to track the whereabouts of Caitlin's father, Thomas Snow. So I think this is great. The next episode is a full-on Thomas Snow thing. So it's Caitlin's biggest episode, a big Killer Frost episode with Barry, Cisco, and Caitlin all going there. And then I think there's a side story with Nora, Iris, and Sherlock. I'm not too sure what that storyline's going to be, but it's there. But overall, I think this was the worst episode of the season. I think it is. I think it was just lazy. I don't know who wrote this episode, but I just feel like it was lazy writing in a lot of parts. I just feel like, the trailer was exciting. I thought they were going to do some really cool stuff with Ragdoll. And like there were some cool moments. I just think it was a bit of a letdown. I don't think it was like terrible. It was just disappointing. That's disappointing. That's the best way to put it. It was disappointing. The best part of the episode was the side story, which was Caitlin's story, like the Killer Frost story and the interactions between Sherlock, Ralph, Caitlin, and Cisco. I think that was the best part of the episode. As I said, this episode was really anchored down by the fact that they were rushing through the Nora and Iris storyline, which, as I said, has its pros and negatives. I'm on the fence because, I don't really know which side to pick, to be completely honest. But yeah, this episode was weighed down by that. Not going to even mention the Ragdoll fight. We all know it was basically meme tier. I can't wait for the GIFs and memes made from that because it was... Without mentioning it specifically, I'll give a reference to something from Arrow. Remember the season 3 finale when Felicity gets in the Atom suit? It was basically that level tier meme. So, yeah. But overall, it was just a disappointing episode. And I think we're bound to get one of these episodes. So hopefully next episode's a good one and maybe just raises the average for this season that this episode brought down. But thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, it'd be awesome if you could drop a like on it to show your support. Let me know in the comment section down below. What was your favorite part of the episode? What didn't you like? What were your general thoughts and your criticisms and stuff like that? Do you disagree with me? Do you think this was a good episode? There might be someone out there that thinks that. So let me know in the comment section down below if you think that. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. I'll catch you later, guys. Goodbye.